Hey, I wanted to do a quick overview of the preliminary of where I wanted to set up the board. So I was going to be looking at some of these ones, and it's from so this part's like from a bird's eye view of each of the locations of where mind mapping and some other stuff is done. So we have things like how experiment one is the overall acceptance of any reverse theoretical inconsideration of language to the confidence of that. So that was Google data. Not necessarily everything should be normalized or stringent with everything. And then I felt like the final judgment, Johnny Depp metaphor with self and said losses was going to be a good thing, and I'm a good against a lot of antagonists like Dex antagonist, BTC antagonist, and the whole melody that there isn't a root for the the Methodist of how that was not based on being industrial and how something had gotten sapped by service provider over time quickly to not have a definitive value. So I thought that was considerable, that all those things what they were doing, that was going to be, that was part of that, and that I wanted final judgment to be the law to that within the amount of what I can get from 14, which is coded on to this later. Then the 6500 under was going to be checked at that to make sure that at least on yellow color code that we didn't digress something into being normalized before the time that we wanted it to be. Then later on, I could see that how 1000 interior design and how each index card was going to be really helpful. This is going to be a junior class. I felt Devil's Playground was an area that the corners were well cut, and anything that was felt, any kind of like, it's just a better done feel, not necessarily complete, like a macro style, something I guess that has to be founded upon. The foundry is just not really worked on. I guess you can really feel it, or that whether it's the one of what I'm saying, and that's how good you have to be at linguistics and the techno of that. And then I used some of the ones that were in shows for like the 80s and whatever, or whatever era where gym roller rinks, and it's really not off of what can be pressurized for like a short amount of time to being forced to have fun. But then we had the gym, the roller rink, what other ones were really considerate? So we'll go about that, because I feel the implementations for CC, they're not that strong with the support of what facts that if nothing is being done in my favor. I understand what's there, and that the barriers would be contempt enough to distill somebody's decisions that was a problem in that design. So that's not what I want. What I want to do is move, and then I want to idolize some of the previous features. Every time on some kind of metrics, and if it's required to call your parents again, or is a 7100 number. Anyways, I want to show that the March of Madness was to do that to make sure that that stricken energy of what that was run. And it's like, I waited to hear when I was talking about character control, which is an area of speaking 1 to 5. The 3 of having the integrity to say what it is and to have the value put was, it was too dabbled by having a level 2 conversation of what was the respondent. So I've labeled that part as a respondent. So the respondent conversation was more considerable than what was trying to be said, and that was ridiculous. So I'm really trying to push for that. And then I totally made this viable. And for the words that are not something that I was not a participant of who I am not to be who I am. I wish that victory was reversed. I have the imagination of ants, admirable at the grand opening, and being sort of troubled and upset for being in the fireworks industry, and then just kind of not seeing the in-between of the 60s parade, especially at that part. And let's see what else we have here. I don't really see how the Blimp Sky Station really didn't do it for me. And having some of those 21 career day dispute. I mean, having somebody support that my challenge to something that I already want isn't the language of me saying that I want something from CNA. So I've had to track all the people that were in that conversation and then write that down on a note. And then I had to give that to Captain Tim and San Diego for who said that they would look into that, and then cut those parties off of that section. Which then it was like subliminal for whatever. Like if a doctor was saying that, or if at that time for the news, if everybody was suggested on whether they had a weapon or not. From that other part, then the oil rig was significant because Bohr was one that was the set on the rigor of our theory on the theoretical thing, and then how a volume trader was supposed to be illegal, or having that theoretical data to say that those tokens were actual people and they were getting burned. And then I felt a lot like that. I mean, I've been feeling a lot of torture, so I don't know how that's a substitute for an experience. Not really point weight onto what is happening. So I was not too happy about that. So I took each part of what the experience was, made into sectionals, so there isn't any self-justification to what is going on. So whether there's a green light or a red light to what is going on, then that's how that would be. I found that whether I was experiencing information in any amount of layers, true or false, that the most notoriety to the car epidemic was actually knowing what each part does and how that was prevalent. I mean, the O2 to the adjustment of the cam sensors, and that Josh had known on the 31 by the time of what was said to what was acceptable, had made it acceptable to have an O2 failure beyond normal for a possible risk of getting hit. then we did say that, and in our theoretical or stringent game, we said if it was more to see at what the definitive of what Bernstein was wanting, that he was interested in creating like a new definitive at and towards Camp Lejeune as like a meet location. How funny. So then we waited to see that and look at some of the more faxing information on what constitutes as a structure, which we will color code by gray, and then we can see the towers of oligarchy, working, strategy, foundation. And that's a bit annoying, but I guess that's just how that goes. There's nothing really too interesting. I mean, things like the alliteration commands for system failure. So as we're looking into all the negatives, then we wanted to see, I don't really feel that way. I don't feel existential behavior defines what something is, and we kind of learned that, and I just want each part of what is at that it's known that the next thing does not solicit the next thing, and that I was offended because the main four was not respected, or the main four of what I said a tether for an algorithm, if something was not, and that money laundering was supported over what I wanted, and that it's like, it's difficult to see what somebody's asking for when, if I depict the conversion of what I said, and that, I will talk about the other segment, but that's intrusive data on subscription data, that that you're talking and that somebody's like swapping what I say. That's annoying. So pretty much, if it were like that, then it's like I'm hearing the data of what I'm hearing backwards, and that wasn't cool. I didn't think that was cool. The method is like, seeking information, writing it, saying what you like, and then it still don't feel great. So we pick these locations and experimental, and then make sure that's kind of like that. I really hate how, said person, Gwen Stefani, had decided that it's okay to speak out in any way. I don't think that's appropriate. I don't think that represents a signature. And I really hope to see somebody talk better. I'm pretty, as organized as anything to have these issues, that hopefully that by talking to the local county and this attorney, which we did attempt to get into a call with Bernstein, but I think we got a false call, like somebody who was already in trouble for me to call again to activate a chain. So I wasn't like, I'm not gonna call again. like, just on the behalf of Echoes Forum and endangerment, family affairs, and then really seeing the informative of the gesture of proof of occupation and this and that. In the macroeconomy that I see, there should have been no disruption, and that some service provided in itself isn't really doing it. I think somebody is being held hostage with like a multiplier of something that has a good ROI, and that Donaldson Brown's ROI theory is not helping. And I think that is the main thing. That's just a blind guess, if I was to give a blind guess. I was upset that I didn't get a response from ND about what I wanted, and that the advertisement on She-Hulk is like, it's affecting health-wise. Like, it's annoying to feel like I'm getting kicked if I'm watching a movie. It's not enjoyable. So I don't even know. I tried to put these in any sort of sorting, and then I still can't get the metrics or the growth on the launch of that, no matter how I look at it, because there are digressive problems with points of interest. So I just looked at it, and I'm not really getting past the overture of that, whether I'm looking at something or not, and I'm just waiting to hear the correct person and get into contact with the correct attorney that's not going to be an advocate for purple, and that the thing that is provided is for a reason, and it's not going to have things like stolen money from Georgia on my Fifth Third bank, or escrow upmarks of said amount that end in a total of 53. Don't know why that happened. I read it to see that, but it's like, it's not really giving me the associative opportunity to say that the Emerald server of doing something very peridot wasn't destroyed by theft, and that my identity wouldn't fall into the Abyssus server if the adjustments or to the wheel was somebody able to be at themselves of what they wanted to do versus by experimental versus what they would do engineered. My attorney right now is going to be Windstrom Law PLLC, and that information is going to be for any attempts that I make at contact with Captain Tim, and that way we can see some of the interests of what I wanted to do fall in suit with what that was. I don't think 14 would not help you out. I think that you should switch to a different bank for different things right now. I don't think picking on certain things when you didn't have anything really going on is good. I don't think that that there was a beneficiary for me metering what I think that somebody would give to me, like in snail form. So I'm just saying that a lot of the things did help me, Darian, but I wouldn't want to find the cognitive of what the reasons were for that to be true. So I don't like that being seen as from a place where preliminary would have already been good for him. Fostering the green and yellow server was at least an identifier for where they would be found, how healthy they would be, and the saturation of gray and red for myself is a lot more rigorous than what I have had to use before, and it seems a bit off. I mean, we have the new piece and everything is indexed, and I know it's like my words are ever like that, but I don't really get the opportunity for subjection to be what I am internal to being said, because it's being accrued as a respondent value. Even not for some that there's an unjustified realm if at a server, even if the questions to how a server would induct to itself at a more minimal ping rate. So a controlled server system, I think it's intensive. There's something that's defined as something more that is more accessible than should be, and we need to learn how to get the life lock on that, and that's my defense. Alright, we'll be working on these parts. Made this video really quick, so I had something to turn in, and then we're gonna split this in half, and this is the interior design budget, and how we did that, just minus everything, and then entered it, and this is what we were able to come up with if we did $1,000 towards this. $219 for like an 11-foot, $150 for the Gans fridge. Doesn't make so much noise, even without earplugs, we can deal with that. Bed frame, 90, gallon of paint, 30. And then another one will be 30 to a 104, oscillating fan, a 20. That's kind of confident of my block. Really vacuum storage bags will get rid of all the clothes for the thrift, keep that all packed, and that'll be really good. And then those ones, and unfortunately, well, that section private is that it's probably gonna need a master plumber because there is no water lock close to the source, so it was very dangerous. I mean, that could have been a flood and calling the local water system at that time to get that, and that we're hoping to check that out. I was expecting like, hey, said local fire department would figure to implore themselves, and they decided not to signature at that time to be at location. So that don't really make sense, to not even have one unit at the other area. That caused a lot of problems. It caused free occupation to do things that weren't necessarily necessary. It solicited over-servicing, a lot of issues. We could see that we did figure, so it was like a good amount of connections to that thing, and one of them is the only one that was off. And having that Team 10 drag on to, it's just the signature of what was modeled to that, the end signature of what that person's incapable of achieving to the next group that don't really do. And that there wasn't any second advocacy. There's an obvious dependency, and you don't support failure family, monetarily with services. You don't follow directions. You don't acknowledge the YouTube don't signature for that, and you falsify some stuff, not helping out. Yeah, I will wait to see what somebody else does on figuring what to do with that. So this is about a good thing. So that sucks that we have to actually get the plumbing, but it's a faulty home. I mean, it's at that plumbing. It's not that we don't like all that, but that's not a functioning piece of material. It's not functioning safety. Nobody had ever looked at it. I mean, that's not that bad, but this is closed doors. You've offended the confines of my mind, and until some of these things clear, it's like a flat world of what I'm working at. I have no idea. We'll listen for a bit to see if there's any interference. In the meantime, I'm just going to have to be looking for who advocates successes and unsuccesses. Even unrelenting and being able to take a mistake is way more useful to know that in the latter. So I think the next things to do are, I mean, it's just annoying that I don't know. We'll work on each part and then get the release on the mission completion and kind of go from there.